Kate Williamson, Rangeley Economic Opportunity Committee.
Or Reynolds Rangeley Economic Opportunity Committee.
Becca Carmichael, Town of Rangeley.
Joe Roach is here. I'm off camera, but I am here, and I see that Sarah is here, and she's indicated that she can hear us, and I assume she can see us too.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
And Daryl Sterling has just joined. We'll give him a moment to get up to speed. So we've opened the meeting, attendance has been taken. I have asked one of our attorneys, Kristen Collins, to Zoom in. So as soon as I see her in the waiting room, I'll let her in. There are no adjustments to the agenda that I'm aware of. Does anybody in the room have an adjustment to the agenda they'd like to offer? Okay, hearing none, we'll go right to number 3, which is old business. Today we have Sarah Davis with us from Consolidated. We spoke yesterday on the phone. She has Liz is coming into the room. Come on in, Liz.
Unless you want to pull a chair up so you can see.
Yeah.
You sit in the big chair.
You look good there. You're great.
Okay, so we've got Sarah Davis from Consolidated. Sarah and I had a conversation yesterday about a unique opportunity, kind of an exciting opportunity that she's working on. And rather than me try to paraphrase it for you, I asked her if she would come, and she has obliged. So she is with us. Sarah, you have the floor.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm not sure how many of you are following, but just earlier this week, the state of Maine issued a request for information seeking opportunities where they could put together a block grant, if you will, a grant to the federal government for a number of areas in the state of Maine to build out broadband under the NTIA grant program. And the state of Maine is hoping to put together a grant that totals between $22 and $27 million. The upper end of the NTIA granting process, you can ask for up to $30 million. And their understanding is that the NTIA would rather have a couple of big grants than have to go through a million small grants. So as a state, they have decided to put together a grant, and they have reached out to providers and communities and others to seek information on projects that they would like to propose as part of this opportunity. And so I've been working on that. I've been looking at the data, looking at some mapping data. And this project obviously comes to the top of the list for a number of reasons. One is that we've been working for a while. We've done high-level engineering. We have costs. We have an understanding of our portion of the spend, all of those things. So obviously that's easy from Consolidated's perspective because it has a lot of the information that you have to provide in the grant. Also, depending on the mapping data, but in general, we understand this area to be unserved for the most part. And so that puts it high up on the list. You also you can't be a town of 50,000 and you can't be close to a town of 50,000. And of course, since there's only one city in all of Maine that has a population of 50,000 and you're not particularly close to that, that sets this area out. So I'm still seeking approval through the company. I proposed a project yesterday. Nobody objected. I think it's just a formality that I would need approval in the company. We've already planned for this build anyway, with funding coming from somewhere else, being you bonding for it. So seeking a grant for that is sort of a no-brainer. Through the granting process, you have to bring a 10% match if you're a provider, obviously Consolidated, and what it's going to spend on the end connections far exceeds the 10%, so that doesn't seem to be an issue. So assuming I get the final go-ahead, which again, I have very little concern that I will, but just haven't, to be clear, have not checked that complete box. What I would be proposing is that we would go in, as well as Rangeley, Dallas, Rangeley Plantation, all of you, and fill out sort of a partnership that we're going to be the provider that's going to do this, but you as a community support this project. This is where we were headed anyway, and apply for this grant. It's moving very quickly. It is due by currently July 5th. They're going to adjust that to July 6th because they didn't really realize the holiday issue. But that's when the grant's due. They're going to review the information by July 16th, and then they have to prepare their entire application and submit it to the NTIA by June 17th. August 17th. Holy cow, I'm confusing myself. August 17th. So this entire thing is very quick. As I was sharing yesterday, what this would mean for this project, what we would need from you, from our perspective, is the support of the town. I think the Connect Maine Authority values the idea that the community is in support of the project. So obviously we would want you to indicate support. We would take the rowing oar on filling out all the information, indicating the technology, all those things. We do that all the time. No big issue there. And the one thing that would change, you wouldn't have to bond for any of this money, assuming, the state likes it and the federal government approves it. But at the end of the day, you also wouldn't have ownership in the infrastructure. It would stay with Consolidated. It's easier for us that way. It's an easier way to proceed. But that's sort of it. So it saves you a lot of time and energy on the bonding as well as the risk of a bond. And that's what it would be at the end. So I have to, as I said, I have to get final approval out of my shop, which I will expect in the next day or two, because we'll need to get working. And then we would start filling out the information for projects that have a provider and a community working together. There's about a one-pager that you have to fill out that I can send to you. It's not particularly onerous. And then we would move from there. The only issue I could see, I think this would be high on the state of Maine's priorities. I think it fits well with the program. There's not a lot of areas that are better that I can see. The only issue would be how much they're slicing up unserved and underserved, because there's some varying information on that and how you demonstrate it from a mapping perspective. That maps the NTIA are using. Some of them show you completely unserved, some show probably more service than I think really exists in the towns and the townships. So that's the only issue I can see running into. On a meeting today with the Connect Maine Authority, we sort of talked about that, and they indicated those kind of issues would be ferreted out in a conversation between them and the applicants to make sure that they can put forth the strongest application possible. I am not recommending, this part's a little awkward, but I'm not trying to slow down your project, but slow down what you're doing, and maybe these proceed on a parallel path. And ideally, this wins the day and you all don't have to go to bond for money. But, I don't want to slow you down because I can't guarantee this, obviously, on the back end, because I'm dealing with the state and federal government. But we are all in for providing the strongest application possible. We think it's a route. We think it benefits you and the company. And that's my story.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. Any thoughts on that from the folks here in the room? Linda?
Hey, Sarah, I have the application information in front of me.
Wonderful.
And in attachment C, item number 2, it's asking about a maximum amount of matching funds available for the project, and also describe any in-kind contributions that may be claimed as matching funds. Do you understand that to be above and beyond Consolidated's commitment to the build-out cost, or are they looking for municipal contribution?
So what they said today, interestingly enough, was that they only want 10% from the providers, and that they would be willing to kick in the 10% required from communities. So if you ignored us and you filed your own application, the state would subsidize the entire thing, it sounds like, which is a little strange, but the state would subsidize the 10% portion and then ultimately hope that the government subsidized the 90% portion. But with respect to this project, that's why I think it's so attractive. What we are already putting into the project, what we are willing to put in the application and put into the project will exceed the 10%. So there won't be anything else required because we'll more than check the box on the 10%.
Does that answer your question?
I have a question.
Okay. You wanna keep going? I have a question too. but-
I have a question about something else, so let's stick to this.
So on August 17th, it'd be when the it would get approved, is that right, from the NTIA? Is that?
That's when they have to submit the application to the NTIA.
So when is the anticipated date of acceptance?
I think it's mid-September. I think it's like the 21st. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's about a month after the applications are due.
And then the next question is that acceptance and consolidated could start right away? Or is that?
To be perfectly honest, I'd love to think so. With the federal government, things always take a few months to get everything shaken loose. Now, with sufficient commitment, it depends what they indicate to us. If we feel like there's sufficient commitment and everybody's good, we will begin work. If, it's sort of like we've tentatively given you the money, but we need 50 more things before we approve. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily be comfortable starting without knowing for sure the money was coming. So unfortunately, you're dealing with the federal government. So I would say there's an expectation there will be some lag. Hopefully not to be too long.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions related to that?
Yes, Joe, quick question.
Go ahead.
Is Peggy Schaefer and Connect Main Authority gonna be the point source for the state for this whole process, for the submittal and the follow-up admin of the projects?
Yes, so the grants are submitted to the Connect Main Authority and Peggy Schaefer. All questions about the grants are being directed to Peggy Schaefer. And ultimately, they will take this with their consultants. They will vet them all. They're trying to put together the strongest application possible because they want this money. And the way it sounds like is she'll take it all in, see what they have. They'll go make sure they're all strong and winners. And
Yep.
they'll engage in conversations with you about that. So, Rangeley, this looks really great, or, well, this area is a little bit questionable in your town. It looks like it may be served on the maps. Is there a way we can cut that out? And what does that look like? That's kind of what I envision. That's what it sounds like they're gonna have for conversations because they want to get the money, obviously.
Yeah, and they want to get that money out the door and spent. And I could even see with the federal government potential delays, if they can do the approval process by the end of their fiscal year, September 30th, let's say.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we probably can't have things cranked up in the first quarter of 2022 for
Yes.
the actual construction.
Yes, I think there's something in there by the end of November. They're supposed
Yep.
to have the money out the door or something.
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
I heard.
I think that's right, but I don't like to speak for the government because some idea there's no lag there is probably unrealistic.
Well, I'm happy that you're going to be the point source for this as the provider. I just had
Yes.
a broadband consultant had called me earlier in the week to tell me all about this. So
Right.
I'm glad you're going to do this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I need your support as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything you need on that, let me know, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, Peggy, we did meet with Peggy Schaefer maybe a couple weeks ago. She was giving us an update on what the grants were.
Sure.
She knows about Rangeley, and I actually believe in that conversation, she said that Rangeley was considered underserved, or not, unserved,
Unserved.
because we were not the 50-10 or whatever the number was that had just been announced.
We weren't even that consistent 25.
Yeah, we weren't, yeah, so that I think is gonna be good, but she is aware that we've been working on this project, just so you know.
Yes.
That because we've been trying to figure out how to approach, the bonding and the grants and where to go for grants, if that was a opportunity for us.
Yes. And that's no big deal. And it's not like we had fully funded this project and now we're seeking money. It still had, questions remaining. So I don't think there's any reason that we can't proceed based on that. And we were in similar conversations with Long Island and Eastbrook. And we applied for Connect Main grants and won those just recently too. So it's not uncommon to be having these conversations before and still seeking grant money. So I don't anticipate an issue there.
So pretty much we need to provide some type of proof of support, and they're gonna make application, am I understanding that correctly?
That's how I understood it, yeah.
There's a full one pager. It just asks some really basic information that you have to provide. There's nothing in there, you know, all the technology that's going to be used, the speeds that are going to be provided, the cost, we do all that. It's very little. We just want you to file with us because we think that makes it the strongest application possible.
And you'd said we would all four file one pagers, all, right? So it would be even
Yes.
stronger, yeah, okay.
Yes. And I suppose when you do that, you run the risk of they like 3 and don't like the 4th. I don't see that likely in this scenario where you are, but it's entirely possible.
Sarah, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is this better if we do this through the interlocal agreement? Or are you going to be doing this on behalf of each of the communities?
I hadn't really got that far. I think either or is fine. I didn't know how far along you are or if you're at a place that you're comfortable with the interlocal. I just haven't really been clear on that. If you're not, I would recommend, because of the time crunch, that we do this each individually as a community, which unfortunately you run the risk they leave one out. But again, I don't see that as a big risk here. So I guess it really depends. I mean, are we at a comfortable place with the interlocal agreement that you have signing authority?
No, we're not there yet on interlocal agreement. We're trying to beat the bond date. We've got towns voting on the discussion, but we're not a signed interlocal agreement at all at this point.
Yeah, so I would recommend, because of the time crunch, that we submit it as each community.
Sarah, so if, let's say one got set aside, whichever one, would Consolidated then work with us to get that one back in the picture?
Get it, like take it out and redo the class model, or what do you mean by back in the picture?
I don't know. Well, you're saying if the grant was would only fund 3 of the municipalities and not the 4th.
Right.
The 4th still is in the same boat where we're still working off the same hubs that actually.
Yep.
You know, from a Consolidated point of view, you're probably in 2 plantations at the same time with your hubs, right? So,
That's right.
so would you work with the community to make it attractive for that 4th municipality?
Yes.
Whether it was a fund, okay.
Yes, I think the easier thing about that is it's harder when you ask the question of what happens if somebody splits off. But if we were funded in 3 out of the 4 or some number, you know, the fiber is going to be built to a certain point, which is going to decrease the cost to the next hub, right? So that's a good way to think of it. So we could, you know, you're going to have reduced costs by virtue of what's going to happen in the first leg. So yeah, I think that would be very doable. And I think, you know, there's certainly other money coming down that is more than a conversation. I just see this one as fitting it well in your time frame. It's obviously going to happen fast and could really, really be a big benefit for all of us.
So we'll have to act fast before the boat leaves the dock at midnight.
That's exactly, by July 6th, we need this application in. So I expect to have a response today and have staff frankly working on that application tomorrow.
That's great. And there are other supplemental monies out there. There's a webinar happening this Friday morning on regional broadband dialogues and other types of funding. So we'll keep diving into that. But I think this is a really good possibility here.
That's it. And it'll get it in the front of the line of projects. I keep worrying with the flood of money that there is going to be a lack of resources sort of statewide. And so anything we can front load, I think will benefit us hugely.
The other question I have is there would be no altercation, there would be no change in your proposal, like the rates would still be the same for the end user, but we would not have to do the $10 piece, right? So it would be even cheaper,
Yeah, so the 2 things. So you wouldn't have an end user fee because there wouldn't be anything to
make up,
pay off fund. But then also, to be clear, we would own the asset. So in the original proposal, because you were putting in bonding money, you're owning the backbone assets. These would all be consolidated assets. As far as the pricing and all those conditions, those would all be the same.
Okay, thank you.
And
Question.
I sent out an email. Let me just say one thing. I sent out an email. We give sort of a generic presentation on pricing, but we committed to the state of Maine that for all new fiber customers, we turned up through the end of 2023 that we would commit to a $35 50/50 meg product for 2 years. And so when we've been presenting to you, we've been saying for 1 year because that's sort of our pricing across the board. But in Maine, we have a longer commitment than that. Just so you know, if you get confused why we're saying two different things, I'm giving you the sort of Maine specific information. Rob's giving you more like our national pricing.
Sarah, I have one last question.
Sure.
Is there any difference in the scoring of the application if it's based, on the service provider as opposed to being municipally owned?
No.
Okay.
There is no change to that. The application that's actually going to go in is required to be, and it's either the state or a political subdivision of the state. So it has to be a state or a community, and there's an a service provider. So it has to be a partnership either way.
Perfect.
And that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. There are two people with questions. Linda Jones, please go first.
Okay. In the executive summary, Sarah, they're using the FCC federal guidelines of 25/3 rather than the state of Maine's up and Connect Maine Authority's updated minimum bandwidth. We have old statistics here. Well, I'm gonna say they're old. They were initially presented back in December, which had us at just a hair over 72% under the 25.3. And I believe in our discussions with Peggy, they had further clarified those numbers and determined us to be wholly underserved. Unserved, thank you. When we do our individual municipal applications in conjunction with CCI, will you have more definitive numbers that will correlate to this proposal as to what our percentage is for unserved?
Yeah, so we will have consolidated numbers on that. I don't have, we can't speak for other providers, and I'm hoping that the information that is being used is solely based on consolidated information, the federal mapping that the NTIA has done. I'm hoping it's all consistent, but that would be the only fly in the ointment is if some other provider were indicating that they're serving it over that level. I can't reconcile that, obviously.
Right.
But I think, so they have, the way they've done their data, they have layers. So they have, provider information, which says that portions of your towns are served. But then they have 2 layers, which are speed test data that say your town is completely unserved. And there's a number of reasons for that I won't bore you with. But it's unclear whether they're going to use those speed test layers. If they use the speed test layers, you're 100% unserved. So, it's a little unclear what they're going to say with respect to the service in the town, because we run into this a lot. Because, like if we have a hub that's closed and we're not offering service, even though we could serve locations near it, we can't serve that location. There's just constant questions about exactly what service is and what service isn't. So I think that's where you get into the iterative process where they're going to come back if their data says something different, and we'll have that conversation. The way I would envision it is that Consolidated is going to say, here, we're going to serve the whole area. Here's what we show as a total cost. We'll put in at least 10%. And then when they come back to us, that's where we have the conversations. And if we have to pull out pieces, I think we'll be more than fine with the amount of funding Consolidated intended to put into this anyway.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Linda has a follow-up to that, and then we'll go to Steve, and then we'll go to Liz.
I'm actually all set, she answered.
Okay.
Okay. But we got you, Steve. I have one more question. You're coming after me, okay? This is great, and this supports you in this application as we move forward. I'd like to ask a question relevant to the initial proposal.
Sure.
We had talked about tiered funding, and when it starts, what contracting when you start, and then when you finish.
Yes.
And we haven't fully agreed to or fully looked into our financials. I was wondering, when do CCI's service payments begin to the municipalities? Is that at the completion, when you are fully tested and serviceable? Or is that tiered also?
My understanding is once the interest payments start, we start making those payments. I don't remember how frequently we say in the contract, we make them every 6 months or whatever. So when your interest starts, within this, I think it's every 6 months, we make those payments that will start based on that date, the interest on your bond.
Right, we don't have a Rangeley contract, but the sample contract that we did look at was monthly, but that was based on a New Hampshire program. So
Okay.
we'd have to get that.
Yeah, if they gave you that, then it's monthly, and it starts right when the interest starts, because we lose money, frankly. If you look at our model, if you dig into the model a little, we're losing money for the first 3 years, period. So it's not making a difference to us. We just build that right in, that we're losing money until we're 3 years into the turn up.
Awesome.
Just to answer your question, Linda, it looks like our bond payment, this payment structure is every 6 months.
Right, if we go with the bond.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know when they start, because if it was at the
Okay.
end of
Yes, I understand.
construction.
Yeah.
We have to do something in between.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sarah. Steve Philbrook, I know you have a question or two, sir. Go ahead.
Steve,
We have a week from today, all of the municipalities, working backwards, what's your time frame that you need a commitment from all the towns and townships?
Prior to July 6th, definitely, ideally, the beginning of next week, so we can start filling out the applications. Just because we have
Am
to
I
have
understanding
it in by the 6th, sorry.
Am I understanding that obviously time is of the essence? If we wait a week from today, that's the 30th. And the solution to get back to you would be the following day. And I don't know that the other towns quite so quickly. I'm not speaking to them, but I do know I need to let my board know ASAP that we're going to have a special meeting. So give me an accurate time that you'd like to have a number from us, please.
Hold
Did
on.
you get that, Sarah? I know the connection was a little wiggly.
I did. He wants,
I'll clarify a little bit. So all of the elected folks from the 4 communities are meeting as a group on the 30th.
Yeah.
We're asking if that time frame works for you. On the next day, we could be able to provide you with the documentation you need. What I mean by that is we could sign. The Rangeley board has voted to meet as a select board at that joint meeting, so they would have authority to take action in that meeting. I don't know if the other folks have done that or not. But we could do something possibly July 1st. Does
Yeah,
that work?
the first would work. I mean, unless somebody tells me, don't bother, I'm gonna get started. I'm getting this together. And, we'll communicate with you all how we're structuring it. And then by the 1st, if we can have a commitment, we should be able to finish it up and get it filed by the 6th. That should be reasonable, but we're obviously gonna, unless you tell me there's a real potential this doesn't happen, I'm gonna continue getting the application ready.
please do.
Okay, Steve, did you have any other questions?
Do they,
They've been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Liz?
in what form of response are they looking, like minutes of a meeting or a formal letter? Or-
It's just some questions you have to answer. It says when it's an ISP in a community, the ISP fills out one sheet and the community fills out the other sheet.
So Sarah, can we get that sheet right away so we can
They
include,
have it.
oh, do you have the one sheet that they have to fill out?
I think what it does,
Okay.
it's a really basic, there's no risk, we're not committing to anything.
That's exactly right.
Submitting our information for the potential that
Right.
this will be funded and the potential that they would consider it.
That's
So
exactly
I don't know that we need to have an interlocal agreement that we're gonna go for this.
No.
I can ask my assessors and they've already given permission to apply for any grants so we can get. Free money is free money.
Right.
Can I make a copy of that?
That's right. It's a request for information. There is no binding effect for it. But obviously, I would not want to proceed if I didn't think community supported it, because I'd look a little foolish.
Sarah, I have a hypothetical question, because right now I'm like loving everything you're saying, but then I'm my little skeptical hat saying, how about if there's no money and we don't get anything, and then we're back to starting all over again with presenting, so we haven't even presented your proposal to the public, greater good, and we were gonna start scheduling all of those things in the next couple of months. I don't know what I'm trying to ask here. I guess I'm thinking we
Can I
should
give
do
you-
it both parallel at the same
Yes.
time, so that in case we don't get any money, we're back to, we'll have missed the bond, we'll have missed the August 2nd Maine bond.
Yes.
We will have to postpone it, and then we'll be a little risk
Right.
about, because all these other people are gonna be getting this grant. Right, so now, we're gonna be at a little risk about supply, so I just don't
Yeah.
wanna shoot us in the foot in hopes that we might get money that's still questionable.
So what, yeah, that is a risk. I mean, it's a real risk, right? Nothing's guaranteed here. This is ideal for all of us, but not guaranteed. And so what Long Island did is that they got the full amount of the bond approved through the town, headed on a path with everything. And then when they received a Connect Maine grant, it just reduced the amount the town had to bond. And they felt fine about that because they had authority far greater than they actually needed to use it. So, certainly talk to your attorneys or whatever you need to do, but that might be the ideal if you can proceed down the path with, we might need this much money. Hopefully we need none of it. Because it's not difficult to bring that news to your constituents, right?
It's just timing with the bond on August 2nd, and then this isn't, well, we won't know.
We'd have to be assuming we're not gonna get it August 2nd.
Yeah.
We're either gonna get it. the next
Unless we
round.
do have.
How long does it take them to approve bonds?
Well, we wouldn't get the money till November on that August,
So if
bond.
by the time they approved it, we didn't need it,
I don't know how
can
that
you
works.
have to take it?
I don't know.
Draw on it?
That's it, okay. that's-
So let's do one at a time here so the folks offsite can hear us. So I think we've got a pretty good grip on Sarah's presentation. Carrie Keefe, do you have any questions, sir?
I would think if we look like we're willing to pay for it without a bond, would work against us, we'll get the grant. I would think that we're gonna be looking for a town that wants that money, not gonna pay for it either way.
Well, on one sense, yes, and on another sense, no, because the purpose of all these programs, right, is to reduce the digital divide. And so you're trying to bring broadband and equity, and one problem with the bond, not necessarily a problem, but comes with an end user fee, which is an increased cost in broadband. So, in my mind, you're going for this money because you qualify for it. Frankly, you're underserved and you're trying to keep costs low for the town and the taxpayers and the people who are going to use the service. I'm not going to say it's not, that somebody couldn't say it's a problem. I couldn't guarantee that, of course, but to me, it hasn't presented an issue in the past, and I don't see it as presenting an issue because it comes with costs on the back end to the consumer, and you're trying to keep broadband equitable for all is the purpose of these things.
Sarah from Broadband, from Connect Me, and I think she did say that some communities were deemed ineligible because they've already secured money in some types of grant applications. So who knows with this one?
I wouldn't.
Well, we haven't secured any money.
Right, so that's good, right?
Yeah.
We'll find out before we
But
secure
if we secure, or if we
Oh.
apply for a bond and
we can't apply.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like quite literally, it sounds like August 2nd, the bond thing is completely, I mean, if we were gonna move forward, we might do it in a different way other than a bond. After we heard that we were denied on whatever date
Yeah.
in September, we would go get a loan for
Right.
it versus a bond.
Right.
So that we wouldn't have to wait another additional months.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
frequent.
clarifies that.
Yeah, frequently towns have gotten bond anticipation loans. And I
Yeah.
understand those come with pretty low interest rates. So
Okay,
Any
they've
other
worked
questions?
into our model.
Oh, sorry, Sarah. I just
No.
want to point out that for the folks offsite, it's very difficult when we talk at the same time. It makes a distorted noise for those folks. Number two, back to Sarah's presentation. Any follow-up questions from Carrie Keith?
Not really.
Okay, thank you for being here today in person. Appreciate that. Laura, do you have any questions?
No.
Joanne?
I'm good.
Liz?
I'm great.
Thank you. Linda, thank you for being here too, Liz, by the way.
Thank you
Linda?
for being here, Joe.
Rebecca?
No questions.
Mr. Philbrick, do you have any last questions for Sarah Davis?
I don't have any questions for Sarah, but I do for Christine.
Yes, so
Can I say
Kristen
this,
Collins,
Kristen?
yeah, Kristen Collins is in the room. Welcome, Kristen. Sorry I didn't welcome you sooner. I know you came in mid stride there. So we've got Sarah Davis from Consolidated Communications with us. She gave a presentation about a grant opportunity. And Mr. Philbrick has a question for you, ma'am, if you're ready to entertain.
Let's hope I am.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Listen, what we've been presented with is a fantastic opportunity for all communities involved. My concern is twofold. Would you recommend, in your experience, to still march down the interlocal agreement path and get this thing at least on paper so that we're ready to sign should something come up and we need to go for one loan for everybody versus everybody finding different funding streams? That's number one.
Yes, okay, and I'm just catching up with the grant opportunity too. So my understanding from what I'm hearing is that this is changing the mechanism that we would fund this, right? Because CCI would get the grant money and do the build out and own the assets, right? So I'm trying to think, even in that scenario, how the towns need to work together and whether there's still the reason to have an interlocal agreement in that scenario A. So in that case, Sarah, assuming that's how it all works and that's how it gets built out, CCI would simply provide the service to these towns, correct? And there would be no middleman needed on the part of the towns.
That's exactly right.
So I would assume no interlocal agreement needed in that context, right? Okay. And then on the side of, we don't get that grant money and that's not how it works, and we have to go for a revenue bond or some other bond financing in order to build it out. It would be good to have, some framework of an interlocal agreement worked out, because, and I think to the point of the timing that everyone was just talking about, I'm 99% convinced that August is not a doable timeframe to get on the main municipal bond bank schedule and to get an interlocal agreement together and approved by that time. So I think that's out the window anyway. I think we might be looking at the private bond market in January, or the next round of municipal bond applications after that. So, I think we have a little bit of time. When do we expect to hear back, Sarah?
I'll get the exact dates and send them to you, but I believe it is, you get your response, like, I think it's September 21st, and then money starts flowing by November, is what they're anticipating.
Okay. And It's a little bit tricky time-wise, but what I was going to suggest today, not knowing about the grant, was let's shoot for a November approval for an interlocal agreement. And if we have just the basic premise of the interlocal agreement together, and then find out in September that we don't get the grant, that Rangeley is the tricky one here, right? Because Rangeley has to do everything by secret ballot, or probably would. So we need to have 60 days buffer there. If they want to try to get it to coincide with the November ballot. So, you know, I think we would want to have something pretty ready to go, you know, in July or August, just in case. The problem with that is there's a lot of discussion to be had around the interlocal agreement. And that's part of the reason why I said maybe, you know, it's just not going to happen for August. But I know you all were looking at the Katahdin agreement, and that generally has the framework that we need. My problem with that agreement is that it leaves a whole bunch of stuff to be figured out in bylaws. So the communities are going to share the costs according to the bylaws. The board of directors is going to be established according to the bylaws, and none of that is in the agreement. I think it's really important for your voters and for your understanding among yourselves to kind of know, you know, is Rangeley going to have a larger share on the board than others, or is everybody going to have equal membership? How are you going to divide up the costs? And so I think, you know, there's a lot of discussion to be had around that stuff. So the question is, do you want to put in, you know, all that effort and all that discussion, hoping and assuming that you won't need to?
Sarah, do we have to have an interlocal agreement to go forward with a bond?
Yeah, I don't see that it has a role, because you won't have time to get it done before we submit the application. So then, therefore, the application has to really be, you know, the community's support, consolidate its effort. And there's nothing I can think of that you would need it. We would go get the grant. We're obviously doing it with your support, but we don't need anything specific from you guys as partners. We'll just build and provide the service.
For your question. If we have to apply for a bond because we do not get the grant, would it be necessary for us to have an interlocal agreement as among the 4 communities to move forward with CCI's initial proposal?
So complicated here, but as I understand it, so we gave a price to build all 4 towns. If all 4 towns, and this is certainly for your attorney, probably more than me, but we're comfortable if all 4 towns sign on to a contract, you know, and at this rate, and then we have you each, you know, sort of on the hook for this contract. So you could proceed in that manner. I just don't know. I'm not a municipal attorney. I don't know what issues that presents for you as municipalities. For us as a provider, we have, you know, 4 people that are going to get a bond that are all guaranteeing this contract and performance under it. As my understanding, it's not a concern from our perspective. That's really a municipal operational concern.
I mean, from my perspective, you wouldn't be able to apply for a bond as a 4 municipality entity. You'd have to, you know, one community would have to go out and get that bond, but then you'd probably have to still have a, you know, some mechanism through an interlocal agreement on how the money is going to get used.
Right.
So you would not be able to have 4 individual bonds that met the total amount necessary, each community having its own bond?
Well, you still have to worry about the, you know, revenue comes out on the other side. And how is that revenue going to get distributed? Who's going to own what assets?
Right. It's hard to break up assets
for maintenance and to what degree. You know, I think that all really should be in an interlocal agreement. And I think we can get that done for November without any issue. The question is really for Rangeley and how short their time frame can be there, and we can look at that because it could work perfectly that we have a general sense of what goes in the interlocal agreement. We find out we don't get the bond the grant in September, and then turn right around and have an election in November to enter the interlocal agreement.
Well, if it's 60 days, that won't work, because it's September 21st is what she thinks the date is.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Let me clarify.
And November 5th is the,
Yeah,
Is it possible for Rangeley to have an open town
Yes.
meeting? It's
Yes.
not mandatory, just because is it mandatory? Maybe it's.
well, she's saying because we're already voting on November 5th or whatever the date is, that in
In
November.
theory, you could have a separate
You
meeting
can
for
call,
We could.
you can call a meeting, special meeting.
and it could be open, or could it?
I believe so. We just
I
asked
think
them
we
on
got-
Monday.
I think
if
we
they
got
would-
documents, an email about that.
Yeah.
Think about how there
Yeah,
could be
legal responded and I asked you to double check. And you were gonna present it to them.
So, okay, back to the question on the floor. Steve, do you have any follow-up question to the one you asked?
He's not there.
He's gone, I think.
He was there. He
Oh,
keeps
there
coming
he
in
is.
and out.
lost connection.
Okay, we'll go back in the room. Liz, did you have any follow-ups?
No, we were just discussing that, it might be possible for Rangeley, if it comes down to it, to have, a separate open town meeting.
That is possible.
Yep. And
That is
might-
possible. The selectmen have not been presented with that at this point, so they haven't taken any action. That is possible. It's not customary, hasn't been for about 6 years, but it is possible.
Can I ask Kristen another question, a legal question? or
Yeah,
are we
go ahead.
waiting? Okay.
Go ahead.
When we go to do a town meeting to vote for the interlocal, we have to vote for the interlocal agreement, and we also have to vote for the bond. Can we do that on one day? Can we have a dual question meeting, like if you agree to the interlocal agreement, will you allow us to go for a bond for X amount of money? Can that be on one ballot?
Yeah, you don't actually have to have voter authorization for the ballot, because what you're doing is the interlocal agreement will give the interlocal corporation the authority to go out and apply for that bond on
But we don't
behalf
need the
of the member
public.
communities. So yeah, you won't have to approve that separately.
So an interlocal agreement doesn't have to go to taxpayers or voters for approval on a budget that they're gonna spend on behalf of the taxpayers' money?
Yeah, that sounds.
That,
The interlocal agreement will give the corporation the authority to go out and apply for and receive a bond. And whatever expenses are associated with the corporation, including any debt service, which there may not be debt service if it's a revenue bond, that's going to have to be accounted for in the individual community's budgets that are going to get approved by town meeting.
so this corporation can raise an uncapped amount of money without voter approval, and they can go and build the towns for it?
The idea with this whole mechanism is that the revenue bond gives you a pause on having to pay for the bond costs until the revenue starts rolling in. And so there should not be any significant bond costs that get charged to the towns. But there are going to be startup costs, legal expenses, some other things that just have to be spent in the meantime, that before you even get the revenue bond, and some of that may get assessed to the towns. And this is all for the interlocal agreement to work out.
Isn't CCI covering all of our legal costs?
Yes, I mean,
And
that's
bonds.
part of our repayment
Yeah.
structure, but I still find it a little surprising that you don't have to say up to a certain amount
Right.
in the.
I think our I think our municipality would prefer to have a warrant article and an explanation of the dollar figure, rather than we're gonna form an interlocal agreement with 3 other municipalities and we have the authority to take a financial risk in an unspecified amount.
What you would do is just cap the bond authority within the interlocal agreement. So rather than authorizing, because the town can't authorize the corporation to do anything. Only the corporation's board of directors can. So what you can do is approve the interlocal agreement, which can put a cap on how much the interlocal corporation can borrow.
I was trying to hear, sorry.
I couldn't hear anything.
Okay, any other questions related to Sarah Davis's presentation?
Wait, can I just, some of us didn't hear what she said. I believe what you just said was the interlocal agreement would put a cap, could put a cap on what the bond payment would be, correct?
Correct, what the total amount would be.
Yes.
But what about any future obligations? I mean,
We
what
would
if
build
they
that all
wanted to-
into the interlocal.
What if they
agreement?
wanted to upgrade in 20 years and they don't have to come to the townspeople and ask for permission to do anything?
We would build that into the agreement so that it could,
When we wrote the rules of the agreement.
Yeah, what I would say is that there's something that says if any bond, any further bond is required, that they have to go to a district referendum, sort of, you know, for all the communities.
Can I bring up a couple of things? Because I've got to go on at 3 o'clock Zoom after this one. One is we're monitoring the new Maine Broadband Finance Authority that they're putting together over the next few months. So that could be a great backstop between the revenue bonds and other types of funding as well. And I do like the warrant article, the way they wrote it in Walpole, New Hampshire. So I'll just leave you with those, and I have to beg my leave now. Thanks, everyone, for the good feedback.
Thanks, Daryl. Okay, and back to the room. Any questions for Sarah?
Can I just clarify one thing? I was incorrect about the September date. I just pulled it up. They don't have any interim dates, but they will complete their review, selection of successful applicants, and award processing by November 15th. And then they expect the start date for the awards to be November 29th.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
So thank you for the presentation. I think that's all we have for questions. Kristen, do you have any questions for Sarah while she's still in the room?
I don't.
Steve Philbrick, if you can hear us, do you have any final questions for Sarah? Okay, not hearing anything there. Okay, so I think that's item 3A. Sarah, you are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Let's go to 3B.
I'm going to jump. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The item 3B is a presentation for the quarterly meeting. So some things have changed since our last meeting, which is why I put that item first on the agenda. So what's your pleasure? How would you like to approach our setup for next week?
Well, I definitely want to have the quarterly meeting, right, and give them where we're at
Absolutely.
and go through the whole thing. Now, the number, the interlocal versus individual, I mean, we still had, Kristen kind of clarified some things for us where we were thinking individual communities would work. But now, I mean, it sounds like she was saying, no, interlocal, right? From what,
It depends what comes through and how it comes through. I mean, if you've got this grant opportunity.
no, I'm not talking about the grant, I'm just saying in general, in the interlocal, okay. We have to do the solution overview from Consolidated, which is what's our proposal. We have a funding overview, that still is the same, right, bond versus bank. But we will have the opportunity that prior to that, we should put in a thing saying, listen, we have an opportunity right now to get this grant and not have to do the next 4 steps, right? However, we want you to consider doing some of these steps parallel still, just so we're prepared if we do not get the grant, right?
Yes.
So between solution overview, we should have the new grant opportunity. That
and we need
Makes
everyone's
sense.
support, okay, by
And-
that date, on that date, so we can give it to Consolidated the next day.
yeah.
That one page that now all the municipalities have it.
And quite frankly, that solves everything, and that would be wonderful if we wouldn't have to worry about everything, anything ever again. I would love that, so, but November 15th is a long way away. So if they say no, then we're right back to where we started, and then we're in a crunch to get the interlocal agreement in place, so there is some work that still needs to be done with the interlocal agreement and getting those, you know, we went and wrote down terms, but we never did anything. We have to spend the money with the lawyer, right, to write this thing up like it's gonna happen, and then get everybody to agree. So there's still work on that part that needs to happen now. My question would be, do we need to have the consolidated, and should we have the consolidated presentation still in the summer? If we're delaying, we were gonna have a public presentation, right, to present the solution to the public. So when we voted on a bond,
I say we wait for a couple of reasons. One, because we could get bond, we may not, but if we have it in the summer and we don't take action until November, a lot of people lose steam between like summertime and November. If you have it closer to when you're actually asking them to take action, it's fresh in their mind. They don't have, you know.
Don't we want to inform the public even if we are just going for grants?
I think we could write a press release though, maybe for that. Maybe we
Yes.
can write a nice
Yes.
article or something.
I think we really should focus on marketing. And CCI said that they would help us with that. We know there's issues with their, how they're perceived within the community. And this is part of the solution, as well as their package prices, the upgrade of the fiber, which is inclusive of the fiber that exists, is gonna be upgraded, and the speeds. There's a lot of public education to be done. So I would vote to go with, marketing press releases, so people can anticipate what we're working on,
Okay.
and educate them.
So while we have Kristen with us, I have asked her if she's available on the 30th. She has a prior commitment, but she has agreed to answer any questions ahead of time in writing. Now might be a good time if you have any pending questions that you're thinking of now. She's in the room, ask her now, or just take notes and we can ask her between now and then. So Laura, you have a question?
I would just ask for your recommendation on how we proceed in going for the interlocal agreement. Do you have a set bunch of questions that you feel we need to answer as a group, or do we need to come up? I mean, I think it's hard for us to come up with those questions almost.
Yeah, so now that I know that you had looked at the Katahdin agreement and kind of, understood and were interested in that one, what I would do is just take that and maybe annotate it for additional things that I would want the group to talk about and decide on. So we'd use that as the framework for the discussion, and then I'd plug it all back into the interlocal agreement.
You would annotate it, or we would annotate it?
I would annotate it, and then you'd use that to guide your discussion and give me some feedback.
That'd be great.
I don't know.
I'm just-
Katahdin agreement, a Katahdin broadband is different than what we're proposing, so there's gonna be particular elements that are necessary in any interlocal cooperative agreement as far as the administration and the financial appropriations, which should be discussed before.
Yeah, so when we've gone through, like, I can't even tell you how many times I've gone through interlocal agreements and written down and said, okay, bylaws, what would our bylaws be? What would our division be? You know, we can sit here and talk about it. But we want it to be as easy as all we're trying to do is fund it together. We have the same terms and agreements, right, as far as the contract goes with Consolidated. We're just trying to go to a bank and get one check instead of 4 checks, right? And pay once, not 4 times. There's no responsibility we're not a utility. So we're not gonna be providing any service. So I guess I'm going back to almost why we can't have the 4 individual communities, pay their portion separately, agree, if we signed a contract that said Rangeley was 40% and this one was 20 and that one was whatever the numbers were. And at the end of the day, 20 years later, when the revenue came in, that money would come in according to the breakout that we've already decided in the contract. We're just paying for it separately. And if we can't do it that way, can we make the interlocal agreement as simple as possible? Because there's not gonna be an employee for this. We don't have employees. We're not hiring a staff to do nothing for 20 years, but write a check once every 6 months. You know, so it seems kind of like, what's the simplest and easiest way to get what we need to get accomplished? Or can we still do it separately by signing a contract with Consolidated, but having 4 checks, 4 bonds, and 4 checks going to Consolidated?
Mhm.
I know she told us
I'd
no,
have
but
to-
I don't.
I'd have to think that through. I mean, I'll say that the communities where I've reviewed interlocal agreements, by my nature, I always want to simplify things, and I've never simplified these interlocal agreements. I've made them more complex or more detailed because there's so many opportunities for fallout. No matter what, I mean, you say you're not a utility, but you are a utility in the sense that you're going to own utility assets that are providing a service to people. And while you may have a franchise with a company, you know, ideally that's going to stay in effect through this whole period. What if that company goes away? You know, what do we do then? Who has authority to enter a new franchise agreement? You got to have a board, or you've got to have some mechanism among the towns. And even if it's not creating a corporation, you still need to, you know, say this is how responsibility is divided. And this is the agent that handles, you know, signing agreements on behalf of all of us. So I think you still need to have something. And the standard way to do this is to form the corporation. But that doesn't have to be the only way you do it. You could definitely still be a 4 municipality entity, you know, group, and you just kind of spell it all out in the agreement.
Although also we already have existing a board of assessors, maybe that is unfortunately an added responsibility to just kind of oversee this every once in a while. I think we're all pretty good neighbors to each other, and I understand part of the problem is that you can have a box that is in Rangeley Plantation that maybe serves Sandy River Plantation. And so if that box in Rangeley Plantation isn't maintained, that affects the service in Sandy River Plantation. I mean, but I think there's got to be some level of assumed cooperation that if something's in your town, you're going to maintain it.
Consolidated.
But they're maintaining.
Yeah, but
actually,
but it is,
if
service
Consolidated goes out of business, or if they go bankrupt, or that type of thing. And I think if, you know, they went out of business and we need to look for a new provider, we just do what we're doing right now. We get together and hash it out and find somebody else.
Well, they are a provider of last resort, so they can't go bankrupt and just stop. So there would be a continued service while they work it out. Consolidated took over from Fairpoint. If they found themselves in financial trouble, it would be the same situation where they would have a management entity come in and they would continue business until they sorted out their
So would it be logical to think that we, you know, maybe don't have to form an interlocal agreement, that we just go into it with 4 towns?
Well, she's just saying no.
No.
I don't understand, because it seems like if each of us is putting in a certain amount of money, then based on the amount of money that we're putting in, that would sort of stipulate how much money we would get back from CCI. So those numbers should be very easy to establish. And it seems like we ought to be able to have a written agreement to that effect that doesn't involve us making a new corporation, which would assume costs and need legal representation. And I mean, it seems like we're making it too hard for ourselves. And when it's hard for us to understand, try selling it to people who have to sign, you know, vote for it.
Well, that part is, I mean, it's gonna be the same, whether we do it, we still have
I know,
to agree to a
yeah.
bond for $4 million and, go with Consolidated. I mean, they don't really care that we're having a conniption over here, because we're trying to figure out how to make it all work. We're just gonna say, this is the way you make it work, but I think Kristen said so we could create a legal agreement that did not form a corporation that could, with spelling things out still. And your recommendation is?
I want to look at the CCI agreement in this context, because this has always been for me, presented as we need an interlocal agreement. So I need to look at that and see, is there a way to do this without one, or without one that forms a corporation? So,
Thank you.
There are
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Okay,
other areas that we're not totally unique to, like take Phillips, for example. You share boundaries, you share a town line. I mean, those towns don't have interlocal agreements. They probably have, those little boxes that you're sharing, with. Why can't, it sounded like every town could just contract.
well, they don't
with
have
Consolidated.
yeah, I mean, they don't have an agreement with Consolidated. I mean, we're funding Consolidated's project to do our project, which is give us all high speed,
Yeah.
right? And then they're paying us back, so it's
Right.
weird. Otherwise, what Phillips is doing is just what Rangeley and Sandy River and everybody else has been doing, just waiting for them to come by with some new fiber every once in a while. And call them all 100 times to get them to upgrade a hub, so they're not contracted to get they don't have high-speed internet, so it's just a little weird,
Annabelle,
No.
they haven't used this.
No.
I know a guy's got 100.
I'm sure he
megabytes
does,
over
but-
there.
It's not
It's-
Consolidated.
Huh?
Okay, do we have any legal questions for Kristen while she's with us?
Spectrum.
Okay.
Laura?
If, so I guess Kristen, if you look at that, see, do you have,
You don't have it. I
excuse
know
me.
it.
If you can look at that contract and you'll get it to her, yeah.
Same.
We have a meeting a week from today where we're gonna have a conversation, you guys. We're gonna have a conversation with everybody about both, we might just we'll take interlocal or individual option off if your recommendation is that we can only do it interlocal. So I just wanna clarify, because we're gonna be sending presentation materials to them. And so if we know that it's still an option to maybe look at it in a little different way, that would be good to know.
Okay, well, if I can get the contract, I'll take a look, and I'll send some notes back. And I don't
Okay.
think it'll be, anything that's decided, but the options I'll give what the options would be, which are basically interlocal corporation, interlocal agreement without a corporation, and if we think we can do it in a way that doesn't involve an interlocal agreement, then that. One big question I'll have under the CCI agreement, and maybe you all know, is what happens, in terms of the pricing and the mechanism under this contract, what happens if one or two of the towns don't participate at the end of the day?
That's, the contract would have to be renegotiated. It is assuming that all 4 will go in. So
So,
the numbers will change dramatically. They would still offer us an opportunity to do it. But we would have to have at least, well, definitely Rangeley and probably 2 other municipalities, but it would have to be renegotiated.
so that's the concern for me, is you have obligations, if you go to the voters and get authority to get the bond money, and go out and get it or don't get it, that all kind of relates to your
Well,
individual contract with
yeah.
CCI. but
I'm
what
sorry,
about your
just to
obligations
clarify,
on
the town of Rangeley, Rangeley Plantation and Dallas Plantation all agreed to go for a interlocal agreement, right? For talks. We will not vote whether they're gonna go forward with Consolidated's proposal and do any of the bonding until the end, right? Till we're right at the end, number.
No, my point is, if you don't have an interlocal agreement. And the intention is that each town goes to its voters and gets authority to enter the contract and to finance it. But then one of those 4 towns, for instance, just doesn't follow through with it.
It's the
Then
same
what
thing.
happens? Because the other 3 now have gotten authority premised on, you know, this contract, this amount of money, and now it's going to be a different contract and a different amount of money. So
That
the
would be-
concern is you have nothing binding the 4 of you together to commit to this, you know, to one another.
But even if we had an interlocal agreement and one of the towns decides not to do it, we gotta start all over again anyway, so.
Now there are penalties. There'll be penalties in the agreement. If it
Yeah,
was
but we have
already
to, we have to get a whole new agreement from Consolidated. We wouldn't know what the numbers were.
She's saying that the agreement would make it so that you don't have to go, reminding us that you don't have to go to voter approval necessarily for the bond. I think is what she's getting at. If all municipalities join the bond, vote to join the bond, they could just raise the money and it takes the whole voting out of the equation. Which I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have, you might want to put a fail-safe in the interlocal agreement that says, you know, this is only going to take effect if all 4 communities sign on.
I think it would be.
Then there will be no bond that's applied for unless all 4 communities are in.
Yeah, that's a good.
I think it would be helpful if you would be able to provide us with an outline that asked all the questions for the information that you have not been annotated Katahdin agreement, because Katahdin's agreement isn't necessarily specific to us. But if there was a clear outline of what information and decisions needed to be made by each plantation so that, or town, so that we could find out those answers and bring those forward to find out if this interlocal is even gonna be possible. I mean, unless we have it from the lawyer who has to write it up, I mean, right, you're probably gonna get different answers than Sandy Rivers is going to have, and Dallas is gonna have, and Ranch is gonna have. Then that would give us a much better starting point to try to put an interlocal together, if that's the way we have to go.
I mean, we're gonna have some time now, so I guess that's the good part about this is we don't have to have it written in 24 hours, I guess, right? So, I just don't wanna keep doing this every 2 weeks, right? I just want an answer on what needs to be in it, and then let's answer it and then get it done.
Yeah, if we could have an outline of the basics, it could be presented at the June 30th meeting. And then everybody can take it, go to their assessor select board meeting and say, okay, let's, you know, fill this in, but we would have a bit of a discussion while we're all together. Say we wanted a 5-member for municipalities,
that, yeah.
equal representation. Discuss
have
the
that sheet of
allocations and, you know, just the nuts and bolts. We'd be a lot further down the road.
What's the agreement what's this gonna cost to make this agreement? Where's that coming from?
CCI is paying for it,
They're gonna pay for
all
the
legal,
agreement?
legal.
So if we get the grant, are they still gonna reimburse us for the time and the lawyer's fees that we're spending on?
It's in the contract. And we can
So even
negotiate
if okay, that's
We
great.
have a contract?
We would not have a contract if we got the grant, because they would be getting the money and.
True. This is true.
So that's
We don't
not a true statement, I don't think. I think we
So that would
would
be
be.
a question for Sarah.
Right,
Yeah.
if we're doing all this effort now and then we get the grant, we.
When
Will you compensate us for our legal?
wouldn't it be worth paying legal if we didn't have to risk
Yes.
it?
It can be
Okay,
expensive.
We already are, I mean, we're paying legal right now.
So I'd like to get to the nuts and bolts of what we're gonna do for the presentation on the 30th. But before I do that, I wanna make sure that we've asked all the questions that are in our minds right now for Kristen. And then I think we can let her go get back to her day.
Yeah, I do want to bring up, you know, if I'm going to put a bunch of time into an interlocal agreement, I need to be clear who I'm representing. So I'm either representing Rangeley and have to disclaim to the rest of the communities that I'm not representing your community, or I need to represent the 4 towns together in this venture and, you know, have your individual boards agree to that.
Yeah, that's another housekeeping item. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. That is another housekeeping item that Kristen
Okay.
kind of talked about, and I think this group should talk about it and how we want to propose that to our elected folks. Right now, Kristen represents Rangeley. She's working with us, you know, in spirit of cooperation, but we would have to delineate that before we got too far down the road or too serious. So any other questions for Kristen? Kristen, do you have any other follow-up?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you. I have my marching orders.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for being here. This is a very productive meeting. We have one final question from Joanne.
Kristen, have you read the CCI agreement that they've proposed?
I'm not sure that I have. I mean, I've read their similar agreements in other towns, but I've not looked at this one.
I'll send that right over to you this afternoon.
Great.
Okay. All right, Kristen, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all.
Be in touch. Okay, so let's talk about June 30th. Thank you, Laura.
Sorry.
So,
I don't know what I'm saying about it, global agreement. I mean, I think I'll just think about it and rewrite something in that area. Just to explain to everybody where we're at, that's, you know, I don't know if we'll have more information. So that point, but that's why we've been going down this, but that we are gonna have to, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. We're hoping for this grant, right? But we're gonna try, we're telling them that we're going to be going a little bit of a parallel route, just in case the grant is a no.
You have to.
Because then we would be starting all over again.
so let's talk about the presentation. So do we paraphrase what Sarah told us today? Give them the presentation on that. Don't ask for any action on that. Give the second part of give the whole presentation and then say, we're asking for support of the grant, but we wanted you to understand the whole picture before we ask for that support, and we do it in a different way.
Well, why don't we ask to do that as a group, as an interlocal group? If the application is going to be individual, because we do not have a legal entity as an interlocal corporation. So wouldn't it come down to the individual municipalities?
I think we're talking about two different things. I'm a
No,
little
I think
confused.
you have a time frame,
Yeah.
and you're about out of that time frame to actually get that paperwork approved by your assessors and get it filled out and back to them. So while everybody's in a room,
I sent this to Sarah and asked if we could participate, and my assessors and we're in constant communication. We know that time is of the essence. And we.
Are you meeting before the 30th?
Yeah,
My board is not. They're meeting on the 30th. That's the board of selectmen. So that's why I'm asking this.
at the quarterly meeting.
Yes, they'll be able to take action in that meeting if they
Right.
need to.
Senior River's having their annual meeting, I'm sure.
Saturday.
Saturday, and I'm sure Joanne put it forward to her other assessors to ask permission to apply for a grant. I don't see a downside to this.
No, we gotta.
But don't you think we should inform the room, people that are in this
Okay.
quarterly meetings?
We have a couple, we have a lot of things going on. We're talking about the next steps right there. We're talking about what are we, I mean, I'm assuming I can lead the conversation and unless somebody else feels more comfortable leading the conversation with the group. Yeah,
I vote for you.
okay.
Wait a minute, everybody gets voted.
Yeah, you could say no, I'm fine with that. I'm sure you'll. But if I'm gonna do it, we're building this story. They know a lot of people know a lot of different parts of this. We've asked all the communities about this interlocal agreement, so they know that part, so we were saying go individual and that could still maybe happen. We just don't know. So we're gonna do an intro. We had already agreed we would do an overview of where we are and what we've done so far. We would do a solution overview. Then we're gonna do a grant opportunity overview. And then at the end of that piece, grant overview, I'm gonna say, if we cannot get the grant, we are back to where we were on Tuesday of last week, which is why we called this meeting, is to go through interlocal agreement, organizational considerations, how we're paying for it, and then the next steps. The next steps are still the same. We gotta communicate to the community about what's going on, right? What the offering is. We would still need to, but we could probably delay this, the contract negotiations with CCI, it wouldn't have to be imminent. We would debate in a later time special town meetings, and we would have to agree on, we're gonna agree on the grant application, and some of the answers might be, we've already agreed and it's all set, and Rangeley might be just that night. And then we need to agree that we're gonna move forward with the plan that we might not get the grant. So that's pretty much what I think next, right?
Yes, that's excellent. I have a question that's a little off topic, but it is somewhat relevant. Linda and others who have been at quarterly meetings, perhaps you've been there. Is any action ever taken on those, or is it strictly
No.
informational?
It's not a legislative body, so no action is taken. It's
So it's
generally
just
just
information.
informative, yeah. I have a couple questions. Rangeley Plantation could potentially have a meeting for their assessors on Monday, which, again, like you said, we would just communicate to our assessors what this grant application is and what it would mean. I think they're planning on coming Wednesday anyway.
So we would just need their approval that you could fill out the paperwork.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
could do that Monday and have that ready for Wednesday potentially. The assessors agree to have a meeting and I can post it, no big deal. And the other thing is, weren't we supposed to have like a draft of an interlocal agreement, like?
We were,
Yeah, that was never, we never got that.
that's where we've been,
Yeah.
that was Kristen. So
We were also gonna get samples, weren't we, of other
We
people's?
did get some weird, but they're all different, they're all.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah, so what happened there was the samples were dispersed and circulated, looked at. Kristen had asked me, what does the group like? What is the one that they like the most? And I kind of reached out, didn't get
I can,
much of an answer on that, so I said, I think the Katahdin one works. It's not perfect, it's not exactly what we're doing, but let's use that as a framework to get the conversation going.
when I talked to MMA, and I know everybody might get different opinions with MMA, but I spent a little bit of time talking with one of their lawyers, and she said that the actual interlocal agreement should specify very detailed things, like your insurance liability, because that was one of the big questions last time. And I asked her about that, and she said the interlocal agreement should specify that. So to me, that's again, something that should be in the interlocal agreement, not in the bylaws,
yeah,
or maybe both, I don't know. But, you know, things like that. should
I
be
think you should
spelled
do
out.
as much in the interlocal agreement, and the bylaws can change next year, somebody could say, look, let's.
Yeah, and I don't
Change
have
them.
confidence going to the public and saying, hey, you should vote to raise this money, or, you know, if they don't know about what the interlocal agreement even is, so if we don't have anything to guide them, and then it's kind of backwards, in my opinion, to go that route too. But
I don't think the voters are gonna feel comfortable for an agreement where that was it, that's your final say now. The assessor or whoever can get in this, in a local
I
thing.
think.
Wait a minute, no,
You're right.
you wanna listen to what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I do, I'm sorry.
And with this hanging over with the grant money. So if you've got a possible grant coming, and you wanna give the assessors the authority to go borrow, what, $4 million?
Well, I think that that's after.
I say we exhaust every possibility to get these grants before we have an agreement.
Right, maybe those
But
talks,
what's the sense of arguing all over that? We don't need it.
maybe those talks would, we're just talking about bare bones, just in case it doesn't happen, that grant. So that way, if we find out on November 15th that we qualify, great. But if we find out we don't, we need to like take some action the next week. And if we have some structure in place, we can take action with that
Wait.
structure.
In 7 days, we can have a meeting, right?
Right, but yes, but if we don't have an interlocal agreement, if that's the road we're going, bones, then we won't have anything to present to people and will be months.
Somebody's gonna have to pay for it, I don't know if they're gonna pay for it. Consolidated gets a grant.
I believe that there are funds that have been put aside for the Rangeley Economic Committee that are being held by the plantations that were already approved.
Yep.
And I would presume that this would come under the Economic Committee.
Not in our town, so years ago, they came to our town and they requested money. They didn't use it all in our town, we have to keep those requests coming in. It was lapsed to surplus, so we don't have that money.
We don't know ours to surplus.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
You know, I'm just-
but we have a good surplus, but we don't take it out of
Well,
warrant article.
it can be.
expenditure.
Okay, so I just wanna make sure I understand, Carrie. You would prefer, and I'm actually not, in a way, I'm not disagreeing that that's not a good way to do it. I mean, is we go all in on the grant and then we start over again fresh in November if they say no.
That's what I say.
So that means we would not get the bond in February, because we would not have 2 months to get the bond. Because it takes longer than that to set up the interlocal agreement and to get the tax payers to vote. So we would then be back into the next August, so it would be a year from now, from August, when we could apply for a bond.
Can I add something?
Is that correct? Am I thinking
So
correctly?
I think that everybody should wait. Kristen's gonna look at the 3 options. She's gonna let us know what option she thinks would be best, or give her opinion on all the options and positives and negatives. I think we should wait on that.
Okay.
And then once that's decided, decide from there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then start working. There's no reason not to do bare bones.
Right.
I mean, that's easy.
Okay.
But
So on Wednesday, when we're presenting to the group, we'll say this is still kind of an unknown, because I don't believe we're gonna get an answer by next Wednesday. But maybe we do, but so when we get a firm answer, we might be coming back to you to say, let's cover our butts on do this.
That's just,
I'm pretty sure that.
no, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that Consolidated, they want that bond, because they're gonna end up, that's free money for them.
The grant is in their best interest.
Without the bond, I mean the grant.
Either way,
Yeah,
They want-
so
they want
I don't
to
think
make
they're
this
gonna
happen.
penalize us for waiting for the grant.
Well, the problem with us not working, having a backup plan, so to speak, is that without a backup plan starting fresh, you're looking at implementation 3 years from now.
Yeah, that's
and
what I'm
competing with
saying.
So,
everyone else who's getting
And
funding.
now you've got the lack of the scarcity of materials and you're at the back of the line. And if you're going to do a quarterly meeting and do a presentation, I think it's really important that you present both options.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too.
Instead of just the one.
I mean, this is an informational meeting. I'm not sitting up here by myself, by the way, people, so you can add it. But I mean,
You're the messenger.
it's just to inform everybody what our options are. Now, we needed, as of 2 hours ago, we needed them to make a decision on some stuff to get moving. Because we needed to have a presentation in 2 weeks. We had to decide if we could go for the bond or not, if, those types of things.
I'm a little concerned about filling out the form after the 30th meeting, because it's my understanding that the Sandy River Town office is closed for the first week in July. Everyone's not here.
But that doesn't mean
So
that
who's
all
gonna-
things
Can she,
She can deputize someone to serve as a clerk if you have to have a meeting while she
Um,
wasn't there. And you can have your meeting even though the office is closed.
Kate, I would like to help with the overview, and I know I sent something
I have been out all morning.
through with some additional
Okay.
comments and information that has come up over the past 7 months that I thought might be pertinent to the overview that weighs the differences. So I'd be happy to help with that.
Okay, perfect.
And if you want to get together, do
Yeah.
it by email. Perhaps we should look at what you proposed and ask if there are any other issues that have come up that we've all been aware of, we've all worked out, we've beaten it to death, we've got a conclusion, but we've got a whole fresh set of people who may not be as up to date.
I do have one question on my broadband solution overview. Just because I wasn't sure what all the interest and fees were, I went with the straight number without the interest and fees. But I do have that bond, this piece of paper that has the write out of it. So the total number's there. I could use that. I think it would be better if I use that number, the total number, which it would be a much higher number because it would show all the interest and break it out that way. It's not gonna be exact, it's still not gonna be at the final number if we were.
Did you
But-
email that to us and maybe I just didn't see it yet?
This I think Linda gave me this.
And actually I used calendar year end, and you can do fiscal year or calendar year. I didn't know how each of the municipalities worked. I don't see calendar or fiscal. Okay, because I think the one you have.
I'm not
is
breaking
calendar.
anything down, but this piece of paper could be
It
included.
changes, Kate, it just changes the final number. So this is the most current, if everybody's on a fiscal year, rather than they're on calendar, anyhow. So it just changes the number a little bit, but it gives the interest payments, interest and principal.
So when you break down Dallas, Sandy River and the plantations and all those, you'll change those numbers to reflect the amount.
So instead of it being 836 for Dallas, it's gonna be more like 1 million.
Okay.
Because it will have the interest, and then I'll break it out by, I had gone
Right.
slash and then annual.
But we can work on those numbers and
I just didn't have them, so I just used the base number,
right.
okay?
And were we gonna have materials ahead of time?
Yes.
for
Yeah.
pickup?
So I had sent an email out this morning where I said we wanna have this, the bond, maybe this included, I'm not. That would we need this agenda. I don't know if I didn't go out, I thought I had sent and left, but,
I know.
okay.
Oh, I got it.
And then, the proposal from CCI, the service agreement from CCI. Is there any other documentation the presentation itself?
I thought your list was very well thought out and inclusive.
Okay.
And I just added some of the things we had discussed in our last meeting when I did a matrix for the other plans that are available. I'm waiting on the Verizon Wi-Fi, and I also have a US cellular, which I didn't include in that.
Okay.
And I think it's helpful to compare them side by side. Because this is a very reasonable plan that will be accessible to everyone, and the others just aren't. Is there more information, like an outline of, so people understand the bond process and when the payments are made? I know we have the sheet there.
Yeah, I can put something together.
That would be handy. And if
And that
both of
wasn't-
the banks are interested, because they can do bonds as well. They will not do interest rates, and that's another thing that you can bring into factoring
I don't have anything
A
on the bond versus bank.
a
other than-
delay.
Did
Because
we
if
get that,
interest
did we
rates are
do
going up.
that presentation, bond versus bank?
We talked about it the last meeting.
I know, but I don't have anything written down to say to the people to vote on the 30th about that. So like this one pager on
Just an
interlocal
just
versus.
an overview would be good. We typically don't bond.
When, did you say that the banks would not talk about interest rates? Is that what you were saying?
They wouldn't give anything back on it, even if we did a formal RFP until the time came, because they're very Republican. But the bond bank does project it, and their estimates, which is handy for planning, but of course that can change.
I have a couple of questions. Kate, so I have the formal agenda. Can I meet with you after, plug in the things that you've got on your agenda so that when everybody gets it?
Did you get that email?
I did not get the email from you. I wasn't caught. I don't see it. I don't think I was on. I'll
It
use
was
that.
really early in the morning.
I might, up at 5:30 still. I might not, as I was typing in names, but could you forward that to him?
So that agenda is all set for the.
Well, that was the intro. Well, no, I have to add the grant thing.
Right, but what I'm saying is there's a formal agenda for these quarterly meetings. I want to make sure that I have a generic one here that will cover that, but if you want those talking points on the agenda, I'm happy to put that together.
I think you can do a generic one, because the thing on that agenda is gonna say presentation
It
from the
does.
delegates.
Let me read it to you.
Okay,
So,
great.
while we're all in the room, here's what I've got. Call to order, Rangeley Region Broadband Delegates Presentation. Broadband questions and answers. Broadband next steps. And then I said, old business, new business reports have been tabled because this is gonna eat up the whole meeting.
Yeah.
Do you want me to be that detailed, or you just want me to say Rangeley Broadband Delegates
I think
Presentation?
you can just say the presentation, because
That's
the
all it's talking about.
presentation has
Okay,
next steps on it anyways.
so that's
Next
done.
question.
That question's answered. So let's talk about next steps for a minute, just so I understand where we're at. Are we, as a group, so we want to give options, but we also need to be prepared, I believe, to give a recommendation.
Right,
So the recommendation, I think, is the grant. That's what we're gonna recommend. The option, the next step, if that doesn't work, if we try that, and it doesn't work, is the bond, right? So last thing you said about it, Kate, was let's just wait till next year. I think November is still a viable option.
not
If
if,
not February, so there's an application deadline in February for June of next year.
right, but
So-
I'm saying November 29th, November 15th, they're gonna just tell them if they've got it, right? That's what she said. December 15th, January 15th, right? So you're gonna have a special town meeting on January. My concern is if we don't do some work, then we're not gonna make and she just said you need 60 days in the town of Rangeley for your ballots. I don't know why 60.
You can use an expedited process, which is 30 days back, but
Yeah.
if it's a normal process, it's 45
So-
days, I think. So that's where 60 comes
If the
from.
governor declared the lift of emergency, I don't know if that changes that emergency legislation or not, but that would shorten.
But you can
that
still
Still
do an
call.
open meeting.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
legally you can. And if you are going to have a secret ballot, you can call an open meeting and do it the old fashioned way. If you go with secret ballots and absentee ballots, you have a longer timeline.
So there's a
That's it.
difference between secret ballot and written ballot. A secret ballot is
Pre-printed
yeah.
with absentee ballots.
Written ballot is like
available 30
if you
days
go
ahead.
to open meeting and someone stands up and declares, hey, I declare that article number 1 be by a written ballot. Then everybody gets a piece of paper and you drop it in the box.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that, or there's just the show of hands.
So I guess my question is for the group, what are we going to recommend, or what are we gonna offer as an option? Is it either November or is it February? Or is it something different?
Well,
So if we have something. to
we can go
work
to a
with,
bank for a bond to go forward.
Yeah, that's true.
if
We
we-
could look at the construction loan.
But we won't be ready because we'll have to start on November 15th on an interlocal agreement.
Well, but you kind of have to have a two
Can we get
approach, because we're gonna end up sitting here next June.
Their proposal is only good for 1 year.
Yeah, so
Yeah, we need to work.
So I think we're all in agreement. The option 1, grant, yes,
And
parallel approach, doesn't have to be rushed, so we can maybe learn more things over the course of the, as we're going with the thing. We just need you to be aware that this parallel approach should be continuing forward in case the bond, the grant does not happen. And secondly, we want you to be informed that there's no way we're gonna be filing for a bond on August 2nd. Because on Monday night, I said, if we need to file a bond by August 2nd, I need you to have a special town meeting and waive your ballot things and all that stuff, so. I need to tell them, we're not gonna be asking them to do that, because we will not make that.
I think Krista made it quite clear that she couldn't get anything together before that.
Right.
Even if we rushed, even if we all sat down and agreed on that 5-minute member board, we're gonna meet quarterly. Dallas treasurer is going to go receive the account that receives it, and somebody else does something, whatever, even if we came up with that, she's not gonna do it.
Yes, and I also think on, let's say we did the 30-day, whatever, let's say we had a special town meeting on July 27th, like the original plan, July 27th, 28th. We couldn't get that to the state of Maine, we couldn't have it approved and turn around and apply for the bond within 5 days.
But we don't want to fall into a deadline trap again.
Yeah.
And put all our eggs into a grant, because I've been through the grant process before, and your consultant will make it sound like the answer to everything, and you're always going positive, and the feedback's always positive, and then it falls apart, and you don't have another opportunity back to.
I know, the only thing I think of, the grant only helps Consolidated, really, it doesn't help us too, I really don't wanna own a network.
Well, we're gonna be helping them when they get the grant, because we'll be buying their service.
Right, but we'd be
But
buying
they
your
lose
service.
money anyway, they lose money, they're
Anyways.
not attractive for them to come in and build.
So-
this
They
out.
don't lose money forever.
No, right,
Hopefully not.
but I don't think they would put something on hold and that when they know we're moving along to go for a grant, if they didn't feel pretty comfortable that they might get it.
very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my only hope.
Maybe save $10, like,
Yeah.
I like that.
I think
No,
we
me
should, I think we should not stress
The one
out.
thing that's different, I think I keep interrupting Carrie, and I apologize for
No, I
that.
think it would.
Was with the surrounding community, this proposal is to provide the opportunity for every single resident to have the option for 1 gig over 1 gig or 250 over 250, instead of if somebody pays enough or if this offering hits their house, which is where I think you were talking about used to some different places in Phillips. There's definitely places in Rangeley that have 1 gig over 1 gig, but that's not everybody. So that's what this solution was to hopefully provide with those services.
And those services will be affordable. You can pay $130 a month plus $400 for the equipment and an installation fee. This doesn't come close to it. So that's where it's attractive to take municipal monies and say there's no risk.
Okay, we comfortable with the presentation? You comfortable, Kate?
I would think that Consolidated would extend the deadline for the whole grant. They're getting that money as a gift. If we go for the bond, they gotta pay that back.
Well, they can't extend any deadlines, because the deadline is with the state.
Well, I think you're talking about the financial contract.
No, I'm not about construction. There's no deadline for that, when they want to start.
Well, we haven't gotten that determination yet, I don't think.
The price supposed to just some dime, right?
1 year for what they proposed, and then they have to look at materials again. Because the cost is going up.
When's that run?
March.
So we could be good if we have something to run with.
So
better to be proactive than reactive.
Yeah, I guess just for this, let's try to all be on the same.
Yes, that's very, very important that we're all speaking the same language when we get in there.
For Wednesday, we kind of are, aren't we? I mean, we're just gonna tell these, like, I guess you're gonna tell them, that these are our options. We may, look at an interlocal agreement. Our lawyer's looking at possibly, just agreements within the municipalities and then no agreement necessary. Or, not, yeah.
And I'll work with you on the overview of this matrix, the cost comparison.
Yeah, right.
And the explanation if Consolidated were to default by being declared bankrupt, how that works. Jeff Nevins, they had written it out to me and I just copied and pasted.
Yeah,
Um,
Friday, I will do something on Friday morning.
Sure.
Okay, I'll call you.
4:30.
You're up at 4:30, give me to 5:30.
And then,
Walk the dog.
and then once we've honed in on that, we can forward it to everybody.
Yeah,
And you can review it, make comment, disagree with it, throw it in the bin, whatever.
No, it's important that we're united on it, that we go in there.
But we're really just showing it to the other assessors and selectmen, right?
Yeah.
yes,
Who should, aren't most of them on board?
they are, but they don't, we've been having these weekly conversations going back and forth. We recommended interlocal, then we were going totally the other direction, and now, so we just need to
Grants.
clarify the grant is right up, that's gonna be big news for them.
And it's more just sharing information at that meeting. We're not
Right.
asking for a determination.
And because we had wanted to, we really wanted to have a presentation by Consolidated to the public in the next 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, we needed everybody to agree to that. Now we have a little more time for that. We still need to do press releases though, and get information out, and that needs the approval of some people.
Like Liz was saying, it's just informational, we're not making recommendations, because.
Well, we are making them,
Grants,
yeah,
but not with the other things.
well, we are making and we're also making the recommendation that we chose CCI. You
But I'm
know,
talking about as far as the bond.
yeah, the bond, we're not making any. And we're not even, I'm breaking out the information as far as what Consolidated did for the percentages. I know that's gonna be the tricky catching point, but just so people know what that means.
You're gonna do fantastic.
No, I'm not, because all these here, if I thought you guys are a tough crowd, I'm sure I would have my hands on the rest of them.
But you're not alone.
No, we're just sitting and talking, right, I'm not standing up and pointing at anybody.
We all can support whatever you say, and that you're just supporting the facts that we've been presented so far. It's not like you're making anything up, you're just
No,
stating what we got.
The group that-
but if you have any,
You brought it to us. I mean, the committee
Yeah.
worked on this for a couple of years to bring this forward.
Yeah.
And then we stumbled along.
I think it's helpful to have someone who's not a select person and or assessor doing the presentation.
but they, yeah. I have no problem doing the presentation, I'm just not gonna be doing a formal presentation, it's gonna be in paper form, and we're gonna be walking through it that way.
Just a thought.
That's what
So I did not put
That's what
any-
I want for the interlocal. I just want a sheet.
That's-
that
so do
go
I.
in. I don't want to see an annotated Katahdin thing. I just want to know what she needs from me.
I agree.
She knows what legalese to plug in.
She does, but if you give an attorney an open field.
I know, they go crazy.
You never do that. It's ours.
Build ours.
That, and you will have to have that housekeeping conversation if we go farther down the line with this interlocal thing about. To be honest, I think you should maybe hire her to do be the interlocal agreement lawyer and have everybody pitch in, and then that solves everything. Instead of having 4 lawyers representing 4 municipalities saying, no, I don't like that term, that term.
The other
Well, I would
thing is-
have, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, this is also our chance too, we're not gonna be creating bylaws for this group, the board of directors are. So this is our chance to really put in our 2 cents worth of what we definitely wanna see happen or not happen with this board, so just to say a little piece of paper, and then if this board does something that you don't like, missing our window of opportunity if we short skirt it, you know, so there's that too.
Everybody feel ready?
Can't wait.
Good discussion, good meeting. Carrie, you all set?
I'm all set, I'm ready.
Good.
I know that you haven't gotten any material, I know it's Wednesday, but do you think it would be possible for me to pick up packets for Monday, as far as like distributing to our assessors? So they would have it ahead of time for Wednesday's meeting. So they
As
would
long as I have it.
I think
Right.
we
You
can,
have it
yeah,
all,
we can
you should have it all.
email.
Oh, that list I just sent you.
Oh, just now?
Well, she just forwarded my message that this morning of the items that we needed.
No, I can't do anything.
Oh,
I have AT&T.
okay.
Doesn't, it's hopeless.
Um,
But I will, and we're gonna refine the overview and get it out by
Yeah.
email, but
don't do my part, but the document, the service agreement from CCI you have.
Which is separate.
Um,
I'm just saying, I think.
the-
We talked about it.
The RFP response you have, we need that in everybody's packet.
Oh, you want me to put that stuff together?
I thought okay, what are we doing?
Yeah,
You tell us.
Yeah.
I thought I send it all, you print out 15 copies.
Yeah, I don't have it. It didn't come through. I don't have that.
you'll get it, but it's been revised since she's, the solutions was.
You can print out, okay,
Yeah.
hold on.
Just send it, yeah.
We can do our own for our assessors and too, so. Make sure. everybody gets it.
Well, what are we doing? Are we having them print out 20 copies for everybody? I don't know what the total number is of people showing up on Wednesday. And then you guys just pick up your packet here at the town office, you pick up 5 packages for your crew, or do you want to print them out on your own? That's up to you guys.
Totally does not matter to me, I'll do whatever, I just know last time, we said that it was important for everybody to get the same printing, so that's.
So why don't we have him print it all out, and then on Monday it will be available. Is that too?
Works for me
Okay,
as long as I. get it
And
by
Monday
Friday.
morning, you can come in and grab as many copies as they.
As long as I have it by Friday morning-ish.
Well, we're not working on our piece until Friday. So-
Right, my
I
last
can
part
pick
will
it
come
up.
in on Friday afternoon.
As late as 2 o'clock on Monday, so.
We'll have that.
I tried to stay out.
Just at least I mean, we can add to it by talking points, yeah. I do not have, you have 2 of the pieces of information already. You have the RFP from CCI and you have the service agreements from CCI. So just print those are gonna go in the package.
Yep, just as long as I have a list of what it is you need.
Okay,
Yeah, you didn't send it to the town, I'm sure that's all.
that's awful, terrible.
Steve got it. Rangeley Plantation, Joanne, Laura, myself.
And Dallas and Santa River make on that document by Monday?
Yep.
I think that would be great, get that in as quick as we can.
Yeah.
You just told.
No,
I think consolidated is, you know, as long as they have it by their meeting.
No, oh, that's what you actually ordered, so all.
Well, that was the July 5th deadline, but, you know, we need to have our meeting before July 5th. And if we're meeting Wednesday, it's just nice to present on Wednesday. Who's in unison, which most likely.
we'll do a joint, each municipality join with consolidated. They want a proposal submission by July 5th.
For the grant, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't have to all agree on that.
Well, we just.
That's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
right?
I would.
No, I would rather.
Are you gonna oppose the grant?
No, Megan.
You never know.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give you this, but I'm actually gonna have to give you a copy of this.
Okay.
This is the bond thing I was talking about.
Are we submitting your-
I just forwarded that message to you.
We should-
Oh, thank you.
We can do it. They haven't even asked me if I want to do it, they're just assuming.
Okay. I'm gonna turn this off.